Are they all back now, Joe? They are, sir. Okay, great. Have a seat, everybody. Thank you. Heather, are you okay? Already? All right, we're back here on the record. And Ms. Lemko, you had a motion?
I do, Your Honor. Well, what I wanted to address, my mic on? Yeah. What I wanted to address and just put the defense on notice with is in the question that Mr. D'Angelo asked the witness, and I wrote it down, that you don't know if this is my client's first contact with law enforcement. You don't know if he's ever spoken to them before. He's opening the door to that incident, Your Honor, with the gun.
I caught that too.
And so the minute he said it, and I just, as a matter of ethics, and I guess not to start tainting a very serious trial, I was this close to going at the witness on my opportunity with, actually, you don't know that it's not. You're the first, you don't know anything. And I didn't do it because I didn't want to highlight it. I didn't think that was appropriate, but I'll put them on notice that that is the state's position, that they have opened the door with respect to that. If they're going to be trying to represent to this jury that their clients never had a police contact, you know, that's why he was, well, then they should hear the rest of the story and the truth of this. So,
Mr. D'Angelo, anything you'd like to say about, I caught that too. You're really treading on really thin ice on that, because Ms. Lemko, you opened the door, basically. Go ahead.
I understand, Your Honor. I guess that wasn't my intention. I will make sure I make note of it, and I will avoid that subject until it's addressed by the witness during that incident occurring. Because I believe that I believe that the incident would be referring to as Miss Ingalls, and she is going to be testifying, I believe, under the state's case. So I think it was addressed in your,
Yeah, I did not allow it.
I believe you allowed Miss Ingalls to testify to the extent of the incident because it was her observations towards the marriage.
Towards the marriage, yes, but I did not allow the 2006 incident with law enforcement.
Correct. I think the incident she was talking about was the one with Miss Ingalls, unless I'm mistaken her statement.
Well, Mr. D'Angelo, the point is, if there's more than one, and it sounds like there is going to be, I wouldn't go there if I were you.
Understood, Your Honor.
So where are we now with that, Ms. Lemko? From your point of view, I think we should just let it be.
at this juncture, we are, Your Honor. But I'm looking for it, because if that's what they're going to do, the state believes that we could respond to that. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
That's the thing to do, is to see what happens. I made an earlier ruling on that, but I could change my mind based upon the representation that was made. I mean, that was, when that came out, it was not good. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Otherwise, let's all stand for the jury.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a seat, everybody. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I trust you had a good lunch, and we're ready for our afternoon session. We'll go approximately an hour and a half, and then we'll take an afternoon break for 15 minutes, and we'll finish out the day. So, Ms. Lemko, are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state would call Sergeant Rick Kurth to the stand.
Joe, can you get the next witness? Okay, very good.
Will the witness please remain standing and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Will the witness please state your name for the record and spell both your first and last name for the court?
My name is Richard A. Kurth,
Spell both your first and last name.
K. Richard, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, middle initial A. Adam. Last name is Kurth, K-U-R-T-H.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Kurth, are you presently employed?
No, I am not.
Okay. Are you retired?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And where were you previously employed?
The Brown County Sheriff's Department.
What was your position at the Sheriff's Department?
I was a patrol sergeant.
Okay. And being a patrol sergeant, previous to that, you were a patrol officer?
Yes, I was.
You advanced on to a patrol sergeant?
That's correct.
How long were you with the Brown County Sheriff's Department?
27 years.
Okay. Were you with any other agencies previous to that?
Yes, I was.
What agency was that?
Actually, to the Berlin Police Department,
Berlin,
in
is that
Green
by
Lake.
Milwaukee?
the Green Lake County, Wisconsin.
Oh, Green Lake. Okay.
And Wrightstown prior to that, part-time.
Okay. So how many years in total have you been a law enforcement officer?
Just over 32.
Okay. In the course of your duties as a law enforcement officer, do you have training and experience with respect to investigating criminal instances of conduct?
Yes,
And on occasion, have those included investigations into missing people
yes,
and homicides?
yes,
Do you have training and experience with respect to taking items of evidence into custody,
yes,
as well as taking statements from alleged victims, witnesses, and suspects?
yes.
When did you retire? Is that recently?
2017, March, I believe it was. March.
Okay. But you would have been working then back in 2013?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, specifically, I'd like to direct your attention to the midday of April 26th of 2013. At some point at 1:13 p.m. on that date, were you dispatched in response to a missing person complaint?
Yes,
Okay. And did that occur at 5118 Coonish Road?
that's correct.
Is that located in the town of Pittsfield, Brown County, Wisconsin?
Yes,
On that date, would you have responded to that residence? Would you gone there?
yes.
All right. When you went there, did you go there alone or were other officers also dispatched?
Christine Bilga was there prior to my arrival, as I remember.
When you're referring to Ms. Bilgo, was she also another officer with your agency?
Yes,
And were you a patrol sergeant at that time?
yes,
So was she an officer that was kind of like working under you?
yeah,
Okay. When you responded to that residence, at some point then, did Christine leave and you kind of finished off the call there?
yes, I was a relief.
Okay. And is that kind of typical protocol within your agency that if it's getting close to the end of a shift, that sometimes people aren't held over for overtime, that other officers just take over?
Yes,
Okay. Now, at the time that you arrived at the residence on that date, did you have any contact with, well, who did you have contact with when you arrived?
Mr. Prokopovitch
Okay,
and Christine.
okay. And the person you just referred to now as Mr. Prokopovitz, do you see him in the courtroom here today?
I faintly remember him as a gentleman sitting over there.
Okay. And when you're talking about the gentleman sitting over there, could you just point with your finger to who you're talking about?
Would be the man in the blue shirt.
Okay. Let the record reflect the witness has pointed a finger and identified the gentleman in the blue shirt as the defendant, James Prokopovitz.
Mr. D'Angelo, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
The record will so reflect that. Thank you.
So do you remember on that date, Deputy Bilgo, did she arrive there before you?
Yes.
All right. And at some point, was there another officer that was called out to help you search?
I remember while in transit to the call, she requested that I seek out a canine unit for this particular call.
And I guess I didn't really ask her, but I should ask you to just explain to the jury, what do you mean by a canine unit?
A dog, a police dog.
Okay. And there are various types of police dogs, is that correct?
Yes, there are.
So there are different canines that search for different things?
Yes.
Are there dogs that search for live people?
Yes.
And are there cadaver dogs searching for dead dogs or dead people? Okay. So on this date, you're calling out a canine to assist in locating somebody?
Yes.
And who is that?
Officer Merlin Cornelius from the Oneida Police Department.
Okay.
What I recall, the request was we were trying to find a staff that particular call because we have multiple dogs in our agency. The city of Green Bay has multiple dogs on theirs, and then we ended up finding Merlin, I believe, was on duty at the time.
And just so the jury understands, a canine, just like a police officer working a shift, a canine is a work dog that would work a shift
Yes.
along with its handler.
Yes.
So they're not always available or around at that time if their handler's not on shift.
That's correct.
So there are times agencies use other agencies to assist in their investigations.
Yes.
Okay. And had you worked with Officer Cornelius?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So on that date, as you arrived at, were you?
One more, what I remember of the incident, I know Officer Bilgo was doing most of the conversing with the complainant, Mr. Prokopovitch, at the time.
And then were you and Officer Cornelius searching the grounds or the area?
Yes, we did an extensive search with the dog, and I accompanied him just in case we would come across something of significance that would have to be handled. A large amount of area. If I had to guess, it was probably about a 40-acre area. It was pretty expansive.
And the residence that you're at, would you describe this as a house or a farmhouse or?
I would describe it as a farmette and an abandoned barn, abandoned silo, if I remember of it. Older structures.
Okay.
Not much around, if any, for animals that I could remember.
Now, at the time that you are responding to the area and you're beginning this search, the source of what you're doing there, what was the mission? To search for who?
Mrs. Prokopovitch.
Okay.
There was concern that at the time we were told she may have wandered away from the house off to herself someplace, maybe have killed herself. Or maybe she, the frame of mind I had at the time was maybe she is injured and we need to find her and get her help if she needs help. And there was a degree of concern over an exigent circumstance as far as finding her as soon as we could.
Because at that point you had no reasonable explanation of where she was.
Not at that time, no.
Okay. So when you're talking about being with the canine, are you with Officer Cornelius as he is walking the canine, or are you searching another area? How does that work?
I was right with Officer Cornelius.
Okay.
I remember that part well because it was muddy, dirty. There was some snow thawing. It was kind of, some of the areas were plowed fields. I remember that well.
Well, let's talk about that. So this area that you're searching, this is April 26, 2013, late April in Wisconsin. What would you describe do you recall what the ground conditions would have been like at that time?
Thawing snow, kind of what you'd see in a mid-spring type setting where the snow is just starting to go away, but the grounds are kind of bland looking. There's no leaves on the trees and no bugs, but it was mud everywhere.
It was muddy?
Muddy, yes.
So when you're describing it in that manner, had you searched other conditions comparable in the past?
Yes.
Okay. And with respect to the conditions that you were seeing on that date, did you find anything unusual with respect to footprints or anything noting anybody walking away from that residence?
Nothing obvious, no, that I can remember.
Okay. Do you remember the terrain of the ground being somewhat bumpy?
Yes. Plowed field, I remember specifically. There was some plowed field. Part of it was Mountain Bay Trail. Part of it was wooded.
Okay. At the time that you are searching through that residence, you're indicating an area that you're walking to on the ground, but isn't there surrounding the house a lot of area? Are you able to also do a visual search for which you'd expect you'd be able to see somebody when it's barren, open ground in April?
In sections and areas of the property, yes.
Okay.
There was a variety of different structure on the property.
Okay. And the area that you would have searched, do you recall whether there were any outbuildings or silos on this property?
I remember at least one silo, an old barn, I believe some other outbuildings.
Do you recall there being a trail near that residence?
The Mountain Bay Trail, yes.
Okay, the Mountain Bay Trail. Is that a trail that you're familiar with?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And did you also search the area from residence proceeding to that trail?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find anything of
No.
significance?
Nothing that,
Okay. And at that time, your report had indicated responding at 1:13 p.m. You searching during daylight hours?
yes.
And would you have had work boots on?
Yes.
So you're able to trudge through that area pretty
It was
easily?
kind of a military style boot, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 2. Do you recognize that?
That appears to be the property over on Coonish Road that we were discussing.
Okay, and when you're referring to the house on here, are you talking to the white house on the left side of the photograph?
That's correct.
Okay, and when you were referring to outbuildings or the silo, are those the red, is it the red one in
The
the
red
middle?
building, the milk house on it, yes.
Okay, okay. Do you remember on that date if those were buildings that were open for you to go into, or don't you recall?
I believe we were able to get in there. I remember stepping into the silo area.
Okay.
My memory serves me
Do you remember the outbuildings though, if those actually were locked, or don't you
Well,
remember?
and I can't remember right offhand.
Okay. You searched what you could on that date?
Yes.
All right. I'm showing you exhibit number 3. Does that appear to the other side of the outbuilding?
Yes.
And I'm showing you exhibit number 4. Does that appear to be Cornish Road?
Yes.
And this area, I'm sorry, did you say, is this an area that you patrol or you're familiar with?
I patrol it, and I'm somewhat familiar with it, yes.
Okay. That field across the street, is that an area that you searched on that day? Do you recall?
I do not believe you went across the road, no,
Okay. Not on that date.
not on that day.
Okay. These are similar. Here's exhibit number 12. Is that still that same area?
Yes, it looks familiar,
So that's a photograph, and are there silos in that picture?
yes,
And those are the silos you're referring to?
I believe so, yes.
I don't know a lot about silos, but are those 1 or 2 silos?
Those are 2 silos.
Okay.
But usually have access down at the base, you can just walk in and big hollow open tunnels.
Okay. Do you recall if there was a burn barrel there on the property?
Faintly remember it, yes.
Okay. And do you see a burn barrel in exhibit number 12?
Yes, I do. On the right side of the picture,
Do you remember if you searched that on that day? Or don't you remember?
I don't remember right off, I can't say for sure.
Okay. Now, the area that you did search, do you remember which direction you went when you were searching from the residence?
If I had to say what I remember about it, we started off to the right side of the property, which would have been going off to the east first, if I remember right. And we kind of made a big circle around east to the north and then to the west, I believe.
And this search that you did, that was almost 8 years ago now? When you work as a law enforcement officer, you memorialize what you do in details, is that right?
That's correct.
On this date, however, as you're arriving,
Ms. Uncle,
sorry. On this date, as you're arriving, though, you're kind of taking over for Deputy Bilgo, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So she may have done some of that work, and now you're just kind of finishing the call, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, were you an officer that returned to the residence and also searched another day, or was this primarily the day you searched?
That was my primary day that I searched.
Okay.
I came back with a group of volunteers the following day, and they conducted their own search.
Okay.
I kind of monitored to see what they were doing. They had a lot of resource they put on it themselves, a lot more than we had at the day
Yep.
that I did it, and I kind of held back and basically told them, if there's something you need, let us know. We'll see if we can help you out.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, what was the name of that group?
I can't remember the name of them right off. They're volunteers.
Okay.
I know that.
There were a lot of different volunteer search groups that assisted in this case. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
All right. I have no further questions. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. D'Angelo, do you have any questions?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Now, you indicated that the time of year is April, so the ground was thawing, but it was still fairly frozen, correct?
It should have been, yes.
Okay. So you made a comment that it was somewhat muddy. There was only spots that were muddy, but most of the part of the ground was still pretty solid when you were walking around, true?
I remember, basically what I remember of it was hard to move around on it because it was kind of hard on my ankles when I was slipping and sliding on the mud. That's why I remember it.
Okay, so when you say you're slipping and sliding, like you weren't sinking into the mud where you were creating like mud puddles, but you were slipping because it was kind of icy still?
I was still sinking in some of it. It was wet.
It was wet, okay.
Wet.
Did you ever go into the Prokopovitz house that day?
I believe so.
Did you see any mud or any signs of mud being tracked into the house that day?
I can't see either way. I can't,
Okay.
honestly.
And as far as the walk goes, was the driveway fairly dry when you walked the driveway when you were searching?
I'm going to describe everything as kind of wet.
Kind of wet? Okay. But you didn't find anything of evidentiary value the day you went searching with the K-9 unit, correct?
No.
Is that a
No,
yes?
and I did not find any evidentiary value.
All right. I apologize with the...
Okay, yeah, I think my biggest thing that day when I was there was if there's somebody out there, we needed to get them help if they needed the help.
Okay, so at this point in the time you were searching, it was a missing person. You're just trying to find that missing person. And when you said you did an extensive search, that was an extensive search of the surrounding area of the house, but you didn't go across the street to the field, or you didn't go very far down on the Mountain Bay Trail, true?
The exact distance down the Mountain Bay Trail we went, I believe, may have been an issue where maybe Merlin took his dog, and now you bring that up, and might have gone off by himself with the dog a little further, and I kind of stood in one area. It was, most of the time we were together, and then sometimes he'd go off and into an area that I wasn't right with him with, and then he'd come back, and we were within shouting distance of each other most of the time.
And as far as your recollection goes, nothing of evidentiary value was found as far as a missing person that day?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Lemko, do you have any other questions? You're excused then, thank you. This witness is excused, is that right, Mr. D'Angelo?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You're free to go. If you would call your next witness then, Ms. Lemko?
At this time, the state would call Officer Merle Cornelius.
All right, we'll just get this wiped down, and then we'll have the next witness up here. Thank you, Marvin.
Will the witness please remain standing and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Will the witness please state your name for the record and spell both your first and last name for the court?
Merlin Cornelius, MERLIN CORNELIUS.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Officer Cornelius.
Good afternoon.
Are you presently employed?
No, I am not.
Are you retired?
Yes, I am.
And previous to being retired, were you employed?
Yes.
Who were you employed with?
The Oneida Tribe?
And was there a specific department within the Oneida tribe you were employed with?
The Oneida Police Department.
Yeah, can you speak directly, maybe pull the mic closer?
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you were a law enforcement officer with the Oneida Police Department?
Yes,
How long were you employed with them in that capacity?
22 years.
Okay. And were you a law enforcement officer with any other agencies previous to that?
No,
In your role as a law enforcement officer, do you have training and experience with respect to investigating criminal instances of conduct?
yes. I believe so.
And specifically in your role at the Oneida Police Department, were you also a canine officer?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And can you just describe for the jury what type of training comes into play with somebody being a canine officer? Or what did you have to do?
The training, for the training of the purpose of the dog,
Yes.
was both for narcotics and tracking down people looking for persons of interest.
So I think we were educating the jury a little bit earlier. There are different types of canines. And your specific canine, what is your dog's name? Or what was your dog's name?
It was Bo. I actually had 3 dogs. They're all German Shepherds.
Well, let's go back to 2013. What canine?
That was Bo.
Bo?
Yes,
How do you spell that?
it's B-O.
Bo, okay. So, and Bo, what kind of dog was Bo?
A German Shepherd.
All right. And with regard to you being Bo's handler, when I'm referring to a handler, what's a handler?
The person that handles the dog, I was the only one. Came home with me and I took care of him.
And is that important with canines, that the handler, the dog lives with the canine, that they really bond with the handler?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay. And to be able to be the person so that the jury knows not every officer at the police department then handles that dog. There's just one specific officer assigned at a time?
Yes, well, to that dog.
Yep. So like you just indicated, that dog then lived with you, worked with you, was with you.
Yes,
So if you were working a particular shift with the canine, then you could be available to assist your department or other agencies as well.
yes,
In Brown County with the various police departments, is it typical that the agencies will work with each other on investigations and assist each other?
yes,
In having a canine and working as a canine handler, though, there was specific training that you had to go through with, let's say, Bo, in order to have him certified. Is that correct?
yes,
You referred to the fact that he was a canine for narcotics as well as tracking people. Is that right?
yes.
When you're talking about tracking people, what do you mean by that?
We'd call it, for like tracking more or less, they call it like a ground disturbance. So like say if this was all a grassy field or even grass.
Here, can you,
I'm sorry.
yeah, put the mic under it. Sorry.
Don't move it up a little bit.
I'm gonna get this thing up a little bit here.
What does that mean, trafficking?
Well, a ground disturbance, that's how they initially start out. As, like say if you got a whole yard of grass here, nobody stepped out there. If you stepped on one area of that grass, it creates where the blades of burnt grass are bent over, that creates a different odor. The dogs start to detect that, and pretty soon they start to correlate that with the scent of the human that also left it down there.
Okay. So in general, when you're trafficking, you're looking for the living scent of a human?
Yes,
Okay, because sometimes we see on TV and they'll like show an article of clothing and make it look like then they're just looking for that. In this case, it is more general that your dog is attempting to pick up a human scent?
yes,
Okay. And so I'd like to now direct your attention to the afternoon of Friday, April 26th of 2013. At some point on that date, were you called out then to assist in looking for a missing person?
yes,
And was that out on Coonish Road?
yes.
Do you remember how you got called out to assist on that?
To be honest, I don't recall. I'm not sure if Christine called me or she in turn had her department call our department and dispatch me out.
Just so the jury knows, when you're saying Christine, who's Christine?
Officer Bilko?
Okay, Christine Bilgo?
Yes,
Now, you're a canine handler, and at that time too, Officer Christine Bilgo, she was married to Trevor Bilgo, is that right?
yes,
And was Trevor also a canine handler?
yes,
Okay, so you were also affiliated with both Officer Bilgos through that connection as well?
yes,
So at some point, either Christine or the Brown County Sheriff's Department asked for your assist on this date.
yes.
And when you received that, do you remember what you did?
I'm pretty sure if I did get called by Christine, I notified my department and requested to see if I was able to go assist Officer Bilko.
Okay. And at some point, did you receive some kind of approval to do that?
Yes,
And then you proceeded to that residence?
yes.
Okay. Do you remember when you arrived, what you did?
I know I met with Christine, and then we went and talked to the gentleman.
Mhm.
And be honest, I can't remember at what point I met up with Officer Kurth, Rick Kurth.
Okay. And sometimes when you're doing assists and things, do you rely on that agency to maybe cut details or reports about what happened?
Yes,
And on this date, you're being brought in as a canine to assist in searching for someone?
yes.
And did you find that person?
No, I did not.
So as a result of that, was it, at that time, did you cut any details about that?
Did I create some details?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. And in those details, did you have a chance to look at those?
No, I did not.
Okay, and you're retired right now, too?
Right.
Okay. But with respect to that, do you have any other independent recollection besides that you went out there on that date and you didn't find?
No, just my memory from that
Sure.
day.
Do you remember any independent contact that you had with Vicky's husband?
Yes.
Okay. And who is he identified as?
I don't remember his name. I just know it's Jim.
Jim? Okay. Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Could you just briefly just point over to who you recall was Jim?
He's sitting in the middle over there in the blue.
And which color shirt is he wearing?
The blue, light blue in the middle.
Okay. Let the record reflect that the witness has pointed his finger over at the defendant, James Prokopovitz, and described what he's wearing.
Mr. D'Angelo, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Record will so reflect then. Thank you.
In the interactions that you had with Jim on that date, do you recall his demeanor?
Yes, I do.
What was that?
He was very calm.
Okay. Had you responded to other missing person reports in the course of your 22 years of law enforcement?
Yes,
Many times when you're responding to that type of call, are people more anxious?
oh, yes.
And the demeanor you saw on that date was not consistent with what you typically saw?
No.
I have no further questions.
Mr. D'Angelo, do you have any questions at all?
Yes, sir. Now, you indicated dog is trained for narcotics and then human detection. When you deployed Bo that day, do you recall if your dog had any notices of human detection around the residence?
No.
There wasn't any human detection on the driveway or anywhere else that you searched?
No.
Okay. Is that unusual, considering there were people coming in and out of the residence?
There usually, I'm not sure what you mean by coming in and out, but there
Well,
was
meaning
nobody
that,
really.
I'm assuming you searched the driveway area that led to the door that went into the residence, correct?
No, not into the house?
Correct.
No.
You didn't search any of the driveway area?
No, I searched the outer buildings
Okay.
and then the creek area.
So the immediate area around the home you didn't search?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. And with regards to, you were just asked a question with regards to Mr. Prokopovitz's demeanor. Now, you say typically people are more anxious. Is there times where you've searched for people that they weren't anxious?
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure. You just testified that Jim's demeanor was calm, correct?
Yes.
Have you, in your time in searching, in your vast experience of dealing with the public and being a police officer, when you're searching for a missing person, is there times where some of their family members are not overly anxious or that they are calm?
What do you mean by family members? I'm not sure if you're referring to just one person or other siblings.
Well, you were asked as a typical scenario that people generally show that they're anxious or have anxiety, correct? Is there times where you've dealt with people who they didn't have this same type of anxiety?
No, sir.
So everybody you've ever dealt with, if they have a missing person, they have anxiety?
I'm not saying they all had anxiety, but they're a little anxious. Like I had one in a general area where the young child was missing, very frantic looking for the young child.
Sure. So a young child would be a little bit different because it is a young child being missing. What about when you're searching for adults? Does everybody seem overly anxious?
I'm not going to say overly anxious, but anxious.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Lemko?
No.
Thank you. You may step down then. And the witnesses excused, Mr. DeAngelo.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
You're excused, and thank you. We can call your next witness, please. Marvin, if you could wipe this down. Thank you. Who are you calling next, then, Ms. Lemko?
I think Officer Roush.
Okay, thank you.
Zachary Roush.
Thank you.
Will the witness please remain standing and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Will the witness please state your name for the record and spell both your first and last name for the court?
Zachary Roush, Z-A-C-H-A-R-Y, R-O-U-S-H.
Thank you.
Officer, how are you currently employed?
I am a sergeant in the investigative division of the Brown County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed in law enforcement?
About 20 years.
Is the entirety of that time with the sheriff's office?
No, I worked 8 years in De Pere, and then the past 12 have been with the Sheriff's Office.
And you indicated your current assignment is to the investigative unit, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what does that entail?
Investigating general crimes, basically, a wide variety.
Is that sort of like a detective?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to your role as a sergeant, did you have another role with the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, previous to becoming a investigator, I was a canine handler.
And can you outline for us what being a canine handler entails?
In my particular situation, I handled both a patrol dog and a narcotics detection dog. So they found people as well as they found narcotics.
And this dog that you were a handler for, did it have a name?
Yes, his name was Racky.
Can you spell that for the record?
R-A-C-K-Y.
And what kind of dog was that?
I was a Belgian Malinois.
with respect to its assignment and your assignment as a canine handler, did you receive specialized training to handle that canine?
Yes.
Can you briefly outline that for us?
The initial training is about 7 weeks long. In my particular situation, I went to New Mexico. There was a 7-week basic handler class where, in essence, you learn the basics about, or you taught the dog the basics about what he was going to do in his career. Obviously, coming back to the department, the training was ongoing and continued to be ongoing throughout his career. That was in a variety of different areas. Obviously, the detection of narcotics. There's 4 different drugs that he was trained to find. And then on the patrol side, in essence, his job was to find people, locate them in a variety of different situations. He assisted us on the SWAT team and things like that. So.
Okay. And officer, I think the shield sometimes traps your voice. Maybe you just lean forward a little bit into the microphone.
Okay.
And you mentioned Racky, your canine, was a dual-purpose detection dog. What can you outline that for us?
Yes. So he located narcotics, which would be, there was 4 different types of narcotics that he was trained to detect. And then on the patrol side of things, I guess to be fairly basic with it, he was trained to locate people in a variety of different situations, be it area search, tracking, building searches, things of that nature.
And obviously, you're familiar with why you're here today. Were you ultimately dispatched to a residence on April 27th of 2013?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall about what time?
It was about 6 in the morning, I believe. I was contacted to assist.
And this was in 2013. How long or what period of time were you a canine handler for?
I believe I received Racky January of 2010.
And Racky was still the police canine you were utilizing in April of 2013?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Do you recall to where you were dispatched?
I was dispatched to the area of Coonish Road.
Okay. Are you familiar with that area?
I'm somewhat familiar with that area, yes.
Okay. In the course of your duties in law enforcement, have you patrolled that area previously?
Yes.
Okay. And are you sort of familiar with how it would look based on the topography of the area?
Yes.
Okay. What was the information that you were receiving as to why you were being dispatched there?
The information was that we were looking for a missing person at that time from an address in the vicinity.
And why would you have been requested to respond?
Sometimes we're requested to respond in those instances to search the area surrounding where the person may have gone missing from in an attempt to locate the missing person.
And you said we. Who are you referring to?
I was referring to canine handlers in general, but on that particular instance, I know that Officer Tim Newtalls was with me.
So essentially, you were requested as a canine handler to respond to utilize your dog and search for people.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you mentioned Officer Newtalls also responded. Is he another officer with your department?
He was, yes. He's since retired.
And was he a canine handler as well?
Yes, he was.
And that is why he was requested to respond with you?
Yes.
And based on your recollection, the area of Coonish Road you responded to, first of all, that's 518 Coonish Road. Is that right?
That sounds correct.
Okay. What does that area look like based on your recollection?
Based on my recollection, I remember farm fields or similar to farm fields. There's some wooded area in the vicinity of those fields. I do believe there was a lower not necessarily a creek, but some little lower marsh type area.
Okay. And what areas near there did you search, or were you involved in searching?
I searched the area across the road from the vicinity of the original call, and then I searched along the, there's a trail that's to the north of the residence that runs somewhat parallel to that residence, and we searched the area in the vicinity of the trail.
So you mentioned you searched the area across the road. Are you referring to Coonish Road?
Yes,
So if the residence was on the north side of Coonish Road, you searched the south side of Coonish Road?
yes.
Okay, and what does that area look like?
From my memory, I believe that area, I think there was, again, I'll say a farm field, but it was open area, like smaller grass or hay type of an area. And then there was I remember specifically there was a wooded area alongside that field that had some lower type ground.
So first, with respect to the, I guess, the field area, was that a pretty open area?
Yes,
Okay. So you were able to see the ground for quite some distance in that area?
yes,
And you also said you searched the wooded area that's south of Coonish Road?
right.
Okay. And you mentioned there was some sort of a water source, a creek that sort of runs through there. Did you search that area as well?
Yes.
Okay. And any other areas that you searched around the residence?
Some of the outbuildings and such, I believe we searched as well.
Okay. And you did mention you kind of extended the search up to the trail that runs behind the house, is that right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And throughout any of your searches with Racky, did you locate anything of interest?
I did not, no.
You also indicated you searched some of the outbuildings. I guess, what sort of outbuildings are on this property?
I don't recall, to be honest with you. So,
But you recall there were outbuildings?
yes, I do.
Okay. And you searched those areas?
Yes.
And did you locate anything of interest in those areas?
No.
About how long were you at the Coonish Road property?
I don't recall.
Okay. You recall responding there about 6 a.m. on April 27th?
That's when I got the call to respond to that area, yes.
And do you recall when about you would have responded then?
And it would have been shortly following that, yes.
Okay. And I guess, would you have had any contact with the homeowner of that residence on that date?
I don't recall having any contact with the homeowner on that date.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeAngelo, do you have any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. So, officer, you were deployed with Racky to the residence. You started searching. Did you search by yourself, or did you have a partner with you when you were searching?
For the most part, Tim Newtalls was with me as well with his canine.
So it was 2 officers, 2 canines together, for the most part?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. And do you recall, what the ground conditions were? Was it muddy? Was it frozen, thawing? Do you recall what it was?
I do not recall.
Do you remember having any trouble walking around the area?
I don't recall having any trouble walking around, no.
Okay. And your particular canine, is searching for alive individuals, correct? You don't have one that, your canine didn't search for dead individuals, correct?
And he's not a cadaver dog, so
Okay,
he doesn't search
specifically,
for-
there's a cadaver dog that looks for dead individuals. Your dog, Racky, was specifically looking for an alive or just a body, correct?
Yes, he was trained to locate live people. That's typically what the training consisted of.
Okay. And typically, is your canine's trained to find somebody in any sort of weather condition, typically? Is that right? Or does it have to be specific conditions that it's better in?
No, they're trained to locate in any conditions.
Okay. And when you said you walked around the property area and you went out to the outbuildings, did you walk around the house area immediately? Like the immediate area around the White House?
I don't recall.
Okay. Racky didn't key you on any sort of indication that there was a human scent out there, correct?
I didn't notice anything that would indicate that, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And you walked down to the Mountain Bay Trail. Nothing was indicated at that time either?
That's correct.
As well as across the street in the open field, you didn't find anything of evidential value?
None that I saw, no.
Do you recall whether or not you walked the driveway with Racky?
I do not.
Okay. And to the best of recollection, you didn't have any contact with the parties that lived at that residence, correct?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Lemko or Mr. Saunders, do you have any more questions?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Sergeant, in addition to looking to your canine Racky to see if they were indicating on anything, were you yourself also attempting to locate anything of value to the investigation?
Yeah, certainly when I attempt to locate a person, there's a variety of different things that go into that. A good portion of it is observing your dog and reading the different mannerisms that he may, the different odor changes and mannerisms that he may exhibit when he's coming into possible contact with a person, or at least getting some type of odor. And the same with hunting. We also look at footprints, steps, anything that we can take in to help us locate a direction of travel, or any indication that someone may have been in an area while we're attempting to search that area with the dog as well.
Okay. So obviously when you respond on April 27th, you're informed that you're looking for a missing person at that point, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you keep saying you're looking for anything of evidentiary value. You're looking for a person at that point, right?
Yes.
And in all the areas you outlined that you searched along with your canine, you didn't locate any person.
I did not locate any person.
I guess had been in those areas, would you have expected your canine to indicate?
I would certainly have suspected or expected some type of change in his behavior that would have keyed me to search an area a little differently, or something along those lines that would indicate that there had been or is someone there, yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
Mr. D'Angelo, do you have any recross?
Yeah. Officer, you said you went out there on the 27th, is that correct?
That's, yes.
So that would have been a day or two after the person went missing?
I don't know when the person went missing, but that's the date that we went out there.
Typically, how long does a scent last that your dog would key on? I mean, like, can it do it within days, or does it have to be within days, or can it be a week long, 2 weeks long? Like, what's the limit that the scent changes, or that it would change the indication of what the dog would look for?
I couldn't specifically answer that question. However, I have trained my dog to have reactions to a variety of different time frames. So I can't say exactly how long that time frame would be. However, there are different time frames that they have ability to detect.
And to the best of your knowledge, what's typically the longest time frame you trained your dog to go to?
The longest time frame I've trained my dog to go to is about 12 to 15 hours.
12 to 15 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, officer.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. D'Angelo and Ms. Lemko, or Mr. Saunders, is he released?
We would ask that.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're free. Thank you. If you would call your next witness then, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the state would call Stacey Deer to the stand.
Go ahead, Marvin. We're just going to wipe this down. Okay, why don't you come on up? Thank you. The clerk will swear you in.
Will you please remain standing and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. Will you please state your name for the record and spell both your first and last name?
Stacey Ann Deer, Staceydeer.
Thank you.
Stacey, could you please state your date of birth for the record?
March 31st, 1974.
Okay. And how old are you?
46.
Okay. And if you can kind of just get the mic under you a little bit, we can hear you. Thank you. Stacey, are you married?
Yes.
Who are you married to?
Andrew Deer.
Okay. And do you have any children?
I do. I have 2 girls.
And are they twins?
Yes.
Okay. How old are the twins?
26.
Okay. And what are their names?
Amber Marr and Sabrina Portier.
And do you have any grandbabies?
I do. Roger Case Portier.
And how old's Roger?
He'll be 2 in March.
Okay. Stacey, what is your mom's name?
Victoria Prokopovitz.
And who is your father?
Daryl Edges.
And how are you related to James Prokopovitz?
He is my stepfather.
Okay. When you indicate that Daryl Edges is your father, did he pass away in 1995?
Yes. Your
Your mom had previously been married to him?
correct.
And then at some point, did she marry James Prokopovitz?
Yes, she did.
Do you remember when that was?
October 7th, 1989.
In fact, when your mom married Jim, you all a part of that wedding?
Yes, we were.
Did Jim also have some biological children that were a part of the wedding and a part of your lives back then?
Yes, he did.
Who is that?
Jimmy Prokopovitz, known as Wally, and Lisa Masty.
So when your mother married Jim, you gained 2 step siblings?
Yes,
And when you say Wally, is he James Jr.?
Yep.
Okay. And then James has a daughter, Lisa Mastey.
Mhm.
Now, since April of 2013, specifically April 26th of 2013, have you ever heard from your mother, Vicki?
No.
When your mother married Jim, we'll strike that. Do you have any siblings as well?
I do.
And who are they?
Marsha Loritz and Wesley Edges.
Okay. And who's the oldest of you and Marcia and Wesley?
Marsha.
Okay. How much older than you is Marcia?
2 years? Almost 2 years.
Okay. Because you were born in 74 and she was born in 72?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Wes, is he younger than both of you?
Yes.
Okay. And Wes is how much younger than you?
He was in 77.
So 3 years?
3,
approximately?
yeah.
Okay.
Almost 3.
Now, back when your mother married Jim, did you all move in with Jim along with Lisa Mastey and Wally?
Yes.
Kind of like a blended family of you and your siblings and then Jim's kids?
Yes.
And back when they married back in 1989 and back in those first years, did everyone pretty much get along pretty well?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, well, let's talk about Vicki. Through the years and as you were growing up, did you spend time with your mom doing different things through the years?
Yes.
What were some of the things that you liked to do with your mom?
We would do crafting together. We would go to rummage sales. We liked to shop. She liked to be part of our lives. She'd hang with us and our friends.
Okay.
We'd go driving.
And when you're talking about through the years as you're growing up and spending time with your mom, were there good days and days that weren't so good with your mom?
Yes.
Did your mom suffer from some depression issues?
Yes.
And that was something that you all kind of understood?
Correct.
Were those things that even affected how much contact you were having with her at times?
Yes.
Ultimately, through the years, was there an incident in 1992 when your brother Wes got burned?
Yes.
How did that happen?
He was riding a mini bike in the backyard where we lived at the time, and him and his friend got into an altercation, and his friend, at that point in time, he was mixing 2-cycle oil in the gasoline tank, and the friend came up and pushed him over, and it all spilled on him. And then he took his jacket off, and he went and sat in the wagon, and the friend went and grabbed the lighter out of his jacket and threw it at him.
At the time that that incident had happened, was that pretty devastating for your family?
Yes.
As a result of that, was 80% of Wes's body?
In Milwaukee.
And was that something very traumatic for all of you, but your mom also in particular?
Yes.
At the time that Wes got transferred down to that burn facility, did your mom essentially move down there for those 5 months?
She stayed with him all the time.
So with respect to the relationship that you could see your mom had with Wes, were they pretty close as a result of that?
Yes, they were.
Now, when we're talking about your mom suffering from depression, ultimately, were there 2 documented times where your mom did attempt to take her life?
Was,
One of those, did those happen in a vehicle?
yes,
Do you remember the circumstances of that incident?
that one I don't.
Okay. Your sister Marcia, has she shared with you what had happened?
You have to answer aloud.
I said yes.
When we're talking about things like that, some of the things with respect to that incident in particular, was that something pretty traumatic for all of you?
Yes,
Do you know whether you don't remember because of time or trauma, or you just don't know?
that one I'm not sure of.
But Marcia shared you
Marcia
were,
recalls it, I don't.
okay. And you presently, are you employed?
Yes,
How are you employed?
I work at the hospital,
Okay. What's your position there?
a CNA.
Okay. With respect to healthcare and things, besides seeing your mom's depression, you've also worked in a medical profession where you've seen people suffer from depression?
Absolutely.
That incident that had happened with respect to your mom in the vehicle, that happened back in the 90s, is that right? Happened some time ago when you were little?
That's what I was, yeah. But yeah, in the 90s, Marcia said.
Mm-hmm. The other time besides that, was there a drug overdose where Wes found your mom?
Yes, after that.
Okay. Now that specific incident, do you remember that incident?
Yes,
And that was in 2003?
yes,
At the time, was it alleged that your mom had swallowed some pills?
yes.
At the time that that incident happened, did you have a conversation with your mother right thereafter about the incident and about her attempt to take her life?
After that, yes.
Okay. The jury heard about a statement relative to your mom telling you about what her intent was on that date. Do you recall that statement?
When I,
Let me ask it this. At the time after your mom had attempted suicide, did you have a conversation with your mom about the fact that she had made that attempt on her life?
yes,
And at that time, was there a statement made that was somewhat disturbing to you?
yes.
Okay,
She had,
you're the person she said that to. What did she say?
she had stated that no one would find her next time.
Okay. And when she said that to you, okay, let's date that, 2003. When she said that to you, did you ask her about that?
No,
At any point, did she ever, at some point after that incident, talk to you about the fact she didn't mean that statement?
yes, she did.
Okay. So what was the context of that? When did that happen?
When I had confronted her, well, I didn't confront her, when I had talked to her about a coworker of mine being in the hospital for attempting suicide, and then she had gotten home and she had succeeded. And I had called Mom, and I remember specifically I was standing in Target and I had said, Mom, look, it's so bad that you feel this is your only way out. And she said, it's a feeling that no one can ever No, unless they've been there. It's something you can't describe. And she said, and you feel that's your only option. And then she did tell me, she goes, I say that, but I really don't mean it. So,
And so at one point, was it your understanding that she wouldn't do that?
right.
Okay. And that conversation, when did that take place, if you recall?
I would say maybe, I don't even think it was a year after. Maybe a year after, but I don't think it was even that long.
Okay. So if that attempt was in '03, you think it was before '04?
Yes.
Okay. Now, besides that incident, in December of 2008, was there also another overdose that your mother suffered from? But that one she said was accidental.
Correct.
You recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember how that one occurred?
I don't know how it occurred. She said she honestly did not. She said they think I tried it again. She goes, honestly, I did not mean to overdose. It wasn't intentional.
Okay. And that time, do you remember even your dad, Jim, indicating that he believed it was accidental as well?
Correct.
Okay. So that was not perceived by anybody as being an attempt on her life at that time.
Right.
So then let's backtrack. So the suicide attempt where she overdosed in 2003, that occurred at her house, is that right?
Right.
And she left a note about it?
Yep.
Okay. Did you ever find any kind of note in April of 2013 from your mom?
No.
Now, through the years, besides your mother suffering from some mental health issues, did she also have some health issues?
Yes.
Okay. Now, specifically in the summer of 2012, did she have surgery for anything?
She had colon cancer.
And as a result of her having that colon cancer, and was that surgery in June of 2012?
I believe so.
Did she have any specific medical procedure that left her with anything long-standing on her body?
She had the ileostomy bag.
So first in June, though, she had a colon or a colostomy bag.
Mm-hmm.
And for the jury, because not everybody's in a healthcare profession, what is like a colostomy bag?
It's put on the outside of your stomach where your stool will go either from your large or your small bowel.
Okay. And is that something that sometimes could leak?
Yes.
Does it have a smell to it?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever talk to your mom about her feeling about having that? How she felt about it?
She didn't always like it.
Okay.
She did feel embarrassed about it.
Okay. And then when you refer to an ileostomy, what is that?
It's more liquid. It's not like a colostomy is the firmer of the bowel. So hers is more liquidy.
So,
and it's a different class.
Of a colonoscopy? Okay. And did she have that in October of 2012?
I believe so.
It would have been the fall of 2012? Now, during these times, and throughout the years, we talked about the fact that there were good days and bad days for mom. Is that how you guys kind of referred to it?
Yep.
how your mother was feeling with her physical health sometimes affect her mental health?
I believe so.
Were there ever times that your mother was also, or did your mother ever share with you anything that troubled her in her marriage with Jim, or didn't she?
She didn't say too much, a lot to us kids, but that one time I went out there, she said he was a little overbearing, where he wouldn't let her do her own thing.
Okay. Well, and do you know who handled the bills in their relationship?
He did,
And therefore, did he handle the money?
yes.
Did you ever see that that would affect the decisions your mom would make with being able to buy things?
Yes.
Did you ever hear anything about Jim gambling?
He gambled a lot, yeah.
Okay. And did you ever have the opportunity to view that Jim liked to drink beer?
Yes,
Was that pretty well known?
yes.
Was that something daily or monthly?
Almost daily.
Okay. So that actually, did that become more of a norm with him?
I think that's what he's always done.
Okay,
Come home from work and have beer.
okay. Now, at some point through the years, as you indicated, you yourself, you had a family and you had children, is that right?
Yes,
And when you're referring to the fact that you are employed, do you work full-time?
yes.
Okay. If you could just speak right into the mic a
Sorry.
little bit. Thank you, thank you. And essentially, my point with that is you had your own family as well, is that right?
Yes,
And your life and your lifestyle with your husband and the kids and your grandchild, that's pretty busy as well.
yes.
With regard to the contact that you were having with your mom then, in the prior months prior to her going missing, was it more telephone contact?
Yes.
So I'd like to direct your attention to the morning, I guess mid-afternoon of Friday, April 26th of 2013. At some point on that date, did you receive a telephone call from an officer about your mom?
Yes,
And previous to receiving that telephone call, had you heard from your father, Jim, at all?
no,
And when I'm talking about your relationship with Jim, I've kind of asked you some questions about your mom. Did you generally get along just fine with Jim, your stepdad?
yes.
Do you know how old you were when they got married? So if you
I-
were born in
High
74,
school, maybe a freshman.
if you were born in 74 and you said they got married October 7th of 89, you would have been 15 years old?
Maybe it was middle school then, yeah. That's about right.
Kind of high school years?
Yeah,
Okay. And now you're 46 years old? So he's been in your life all of those years.
yes,
And in particular, you did get along with Jim, isn't that true?
yes.
Okay. What'd you refer to him as?
Dad,
Now, on that date in April, when you received that telephone call, prior to having the police officer call you, had you heard from your mother or Jim
No.
in those couple of days?
No.
And now on that Friday, you're receiving a telephone call from law enforcement?
Correct.
When you received that telephone call, what were you told?
I was told my mom was missing.
And was that something that, what was your thoughts at the time when you heard that?
I didn't have any thoughts. I was shocked. I didn't expect to hear that.
And you hadn't heard that from anyone else?
No.
Nobody called you to see if you had been with her or picked her up or spent time with her or anything?
Nobody.
Okay. As a result of that, did you go over to the house?
We were told not to.
Who told you that?
Jim.
Why did he tell you not to go to the house?
He said because the dogs were there searching, and then they didn't want any other scent back there.
And so that would have been that Friday?
Correct.
Did he indicate to you when you could come to the house?
Sunday.
And then why did he say you could come then?
Because that's when they were all coming to search.
Okay. Were you ever made aware that there was some law enforcement there initially, those couple of days?
He said there was a law enforcement there that day, but I don't know about the rest of the,
Okay.
if there's any more.
Did you ask him what happened, what he knew about it?
Yes.
What did he say?
He just said he got up when, he said he had gotten up at 3 a.m. like he does all the time. And mom wasn't in bed, which is not unusual. She's a night owl. And he said he looked all over for her, all over in the house. He went outside to see if she was out there. And then he got in his truck and went and looked. Drove up and down the road and looked and said she wasn't nowhere around.
And as a result,
He thinks she went for a walk. Because she's trying to get stronger.
so he thought she just had walked away?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And around the time that she went missing, or strike that, at some point your mom did like to take walks, is that right?
Yes.
But had you ever known her to be walking down a road in the middle of the night?
No.
When you're talking about taking walks, would that have been something more general during the daylight hours?
Correct.
Would that have been more around her yard?
Yes.
Had you yourself ever gone down the road for a walk with her?
No.
So with respect to thinking she would have just walked in the middle of the night, did that seem unusual?
She wouldn't walk in the middle of the night.
She wouldn't have walked off that property?
There's no street lights, it's the country.
Okay, that's right. So the rural area that they lived in that house also was not well lit.
Right.
Okay. So that just didn't seem real plausible to you
No.
or reasonable?
No.
So did he also tell you he had gone to work that day?
Yes.
And were you surprised by that?
Yes.
At that point, were you just concerned about trying to find your mom?
Yes.
So when you're told that you can't be at that residence till Sunday, which then would have been the 28th of April, did you then, is that the first time you go to the residence then, that Sunday?
Yes.
At the time that you go to the residence, is your sister, does Marcia go there as well?
Yes.
Did you talk to your brother Wes about what he knew about the last time he saw your mom?
Yes.
So at the time that this occurred, you're living out of the residence, you have your own life, right?
Yes.
And Marcia, she's also married and kids and has her life.
Yes.
But does your brother Wes live in the residence?
He lived at home. Yes.
Okay. And now Wes's personality, is Wes more quiet or real outgoing, or what's he like?
He's very quiet.
Okay. So with that, is Wes the type of guy who kind of keeps to himself?
Yes, he is.
And has Wes also suffered from some depression due to that burn incident years ago?
Yes, he has.
Is that something your mom had in common with Wes?
The depression?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. At the time, does Wes indicate the last time he's seen your mom?
Yes.
When is that?
He said they ate supper, and about 7 o'clock he left and went to a friend's.
Okay. And then does he indicate when he returns?
Around 4 a.m.
Okay. And your dad is also saying that's when Wes comes home, right?
Correct.
Okay. So when you arrive now on that Sunday, do you and Marcia, this is when you guys are now coming to the residence, do you take a look around at the house?
Yes.
Okay. Do you notice anything that your mom has left behind?
Her purse and phone and all that's left behind, yes. And cigarettes.
Okay, let's talk about that. Did you just say her cigarettes?
Yes.
Is that significant that your mom left her cigarettes back?
Yes.
Why is that?
She smoked a lot.
Couple packs a day?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as the exhibit 27. You recognize this?
It's her purse.
Okay. For the record, I'm opening the bag.
That's her stuff.
Can you see them?
Yes. Oops. Yes, that's her stuff.
This appears to be consistent with belongings that belong to your mom.
Yes.
Marcia, your mom's purse, that's something that she would generally have on her person?
Yes.
You've said that you would go rummaging with her. Do you mean like to rummage sales?
Yes.
Would she always have a purse with her?
Yes.
Would she have her personal identifying information like a license in that?
Yes.
And she'd have other things personal to her.
Yes.
When you're there on that Sunday and you're seeing that purse, is that concerning to you?
She never left without it.
She herself would have never voluntarily left without it. So as you are arriving on that Sunday, you mentioned that you were told by Jim that law enforcement was doing some searches, and the jury's heard a little bit about that. But on that Sunday, when you arrive, what are you guys doing?
We're just looking around, and then we mainly stayed outside.
Okay. Were there more searches going on that Sunday?
Yes, the Peoples and Paws were there
Okay.
doing searches, so they had some dogs. So we tried not to walk and get the scent anywhere else,
Okay.
or our scent, so.
Now, this area of Pittsfield, and when we're talking about the house, that is the 5118 Coonish Road, is that right?
Right.
This was a residence that your parents had lived in since 2007.
Right.
So that's about 6 years they have been there.
Correct.
this is located in the town of Pittsfield?
Yes,
Is that like on the border of Pulaski?
yes,
So this is, this area, would you say it's a smaller community?
yes,
A pretty close-knit community?
yes.
At some point, with respect to your mother being missing, have other community friends of your family come to help look for your mom?
Yes,
You're talking about, what did you call them, Paws and
Peoples and Paws.
Peoples and Paws. Who got that group to come there on that Sunday? Do you remember?
That I'm not sure.
Okay. Your older sister,
Ms. Lemko, do we have a lot to go? Because otherwise we'll take an afternoon break.
we do probably, Your
Okay,
Honor.
why don't we take an afternoon break? Well, if everybody would go with bailiff Tom,
Thank you.
stand for the jury, please. We'll take 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we'll see everybody at approximately 12 after 3. Thank you.